Okay, so we're to click the slides for you.
No, it's okay. I will just tell you when I want to change the slide. Okay, is it okay for you, or Maria, are you doing that?
Yeah, I can click the slides.
Well, I think that's really
All right, so let's start. Welcome to this panel on digital impact on competition and distribution. We'll start right with the first speaker, Tamta Margvelashvili.
That's actually a very good pronunciation. Margvelashvili. So yeah.
Exactly, from the Free University in Berlin, and she'll talk about sustainability, a sustainability-driven twist for justifying online selling restraints within selective distribution systems, unveiling a fresh development after Pierre, Fabre, and the Coty saga. So, Tamta, the floor is yours. I'll put a timer and alert you.
Yeah, I will also follow my time here. Good afternoon. Already afternoon, and thank you for having me here in such a great conference. And I must admit that one of Maria's work has been inspiration for me to dig more into this topic, and the topic with a slightly different angle, because there's a sustainability-driven twist, and I'm not just examining the practices, but I'm also the unveiling fresh development for Pierre, Fabre, and Coty Saga. So the second slide, please. The structure of my presentation will be as follows. Firstly, I will set the context. So what we've learned thus far, we will say that. Then what incentives do we have for tomorrow in this topic? And probably in doing so, we'll find the missing pieces of the puzzle. And then I will skip to the conclusion for a better Q&A and discussion, I guess. I make two reservations here. The first is that I'm using supplier, manufacturer, and brand manufacturer, and also the high quality brand manufacturer interchangeably whenever the context allows. And also the second reservation is that I'm not posing the research question directly from the first slide, but I try to have this approach of step-by-step approaching the research questions. Next slide. Rapid proliferation of information and communication technologies has shaped the digital commerce and deeply incentivized digital trade. So internet-based economic infrastructure is a new business reality, and it's not a fresh word anymore. It benefits both suppliers and consumers. And a very simple term, suppliers are given access to the wide range of customers internationally at any given time, while the consumers are not even queuing in the exhausting shopping lines, and they are just clicking the button and getting everything at home. So the e-commerce does really offer some benefits from both sides, and I'm not going to dig more into this topic. However, while this magical power of e-commerce is embraced by many manufacturers for themselves, and themselves could be the keyword here, they are still hesitant to include it in their selective distribution system. So may the reason be the brand reputation or sustainability concerns, or even the fear of rivalry. They are determinedly exercising this trademark right, and this is where the first tension may come in terms of competition and trademark law. So next slide, the behavior pattern of high quality brand manufacturers are twofold. They either try to impose explicit total bans on their online sales in selective distribution systems, or try to circumvent it in a rather tricky way. For example, creating artificial barriers for distributors, or even partnering with digital platforms that are subject to bug criteria, or even prejudicing the distributors' online sales arrangements in favor of their own. And this is probably the example of gas where I should dig into more, because the gas decision of Commission does really say that the main reason for online sales restraints of gas Europe was to avoid cannibalization of their official website. So in contrast with the US antitrust law that does really allow the suppliers to use their trademark rights and to have the restriction on territories or distribution patterns, or even just some price setting activities could be pursued in selective distribution system, EU law sets strong boundaries. This is why it's a very controversial area of EU law, and but this is not really surprising for me. Because an SCS and a trademark owner set may easily convert it from a shield to a sword. And why do I use this metaphors? Probably that's the question right now. It's probably in the regulatory landscape that we should dive into. SDS is typically subject to 101 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, agreements that restrict competition unless they become exempt under individual exemptions of 1013 and vertical block exemption regulation that has been recently revised, and also Pim in his presentation has touched upon this issue. So vertical block exemption regulation that has been revised in 2022 and became effective from June 2022 does offer some new incentives and does accommodate some new societal and economic perspectives that were not addressed with its predecessor. For example, we did not have any digitalization aspects, online sales arrangements in the previous version. So in that case, the courts were tasked to fill in the deficits, and they were some incoherent in some sense, but also they also shaped some important aspects. And probably when we're talking about the online sales arrangements and also the selective distribution system, the most cited judgments are of Pierre, Fabre and Coty. While Pierre Fabre did not really afford this trademark lens-based view of the online sales arrangement, Coty took more lenient angle with cases like COVID and Coty and Petro Group cases, and does shaped two important dimensions. The first dimension was that explicit total bans are not tolerable, and they are incompatible with EU competition law. So when we are effectively using internet as a sales tool and it is prohibited, it's not compatible with EU competition law setting. The second dimension was that the trademark owners do have the right to impose some kind of bans that is not the total prohibition for partnering with the online platforms, and they do have this right. While these judgments, and I'm approaching to my research question here, while these judgments do really shape some important incentives for us to explore more, and also they fueled the debates on, for example, luxury nature or non-luxury nature of the goods, and were criticized for that as well. The revised BPR did offer some kind of enlightenment in that regard, but also said that probably we should think of better justification patterns. And there is a rising concern of sustainability in antitrust, and consumers are aligning their practices for more sustainable products. And I was considering, why not research more sustainability in that context? So should sustainability be a new argument for justifying online sales restraints under the revised version of the BPR and the guidelines, and also after the development of that Pierre, Fabre and Coty? So basically, the next slide serves as a summary of what I'm discussing right now and what my topic was about. The first is that there are still open questions to legality of online sales ban, but not in the total ban side. The revised BPR does offer some new incentives in this regard, and we should embrace that incentives. And that incentives could be the sustainability objectives as a new justification for online sales restraint. More specifically, when we are more or less settled with the luxury and non-luxury debate, may sustainability be a new piece of the puzzle for justifying the online sales arrangement and selective distribution system? So could sustainability be a new sword for the trademark owners to impose harder online sales bans within the EU? I mean, this question, probably the next slide, because it's better. Yeah, I'm not using that slide. Thank you. And whether sustainability is a good justification for SDS is very subjective, and we cannot find really one answer, I think, at least. There are two perspectives on this matter. As e-commerce does really pose some kind of environmental challenges, for example, waste packaging, also energy consumption, transportation emissions, and product treatments. They are really debatable. There are quite a debate about this sustainable feature. The advocates believe that choosing environmentally responsible distributors and ensuring environmentally conscious handling and distribution that aligns with the values of the consumers and also sustainability concerns, and therefore the trademark owners should be able to justify the online sales restraints in this regard. The critics believe that it really limits the consumer choice, because if we impose the online sales, restrictions of the online sales with the shield of, with the camouflage or with the cover of sustainability, it could really hinder the competition in terms of increasing prices, and it contradicts with the principles of free market. Both sides are needed to be carefully considered, however, on a case-by-case basis and with the circumstances at hand. This is why I assume that we should find some incentives, some answers on sustainability justification in the revised versions of the BBR and its guidelines, and also, while not directly applicable, in the horizontal agreements as well. So how far can sustainability serve as a shield or sword for trademark owners? Yeah, the revised BBR does offer some incentives, and what it offers, unlike its predecessor, is that it explicitly defines sustainable development as the core principle of the treaty, along with EU policies, digitalization, and resilient single market. So vertical agreements that aim to achieve sustainability objectives are not considered a separate category of EU competition law or EU competition settings. However, it does not really say what kind of standard should we use for justification. This is why I just skipped to the horizontal guidelines that did offer some kind of perspectives on this matter. And at least 3 warnings, at least 3 things that we should consider while justifying online sales restraints within the sustainability lenses have been shaped out. The first one was that horizontal guidelines do offer sustainability standardization agreement that includes measures like phasing out sustainable products and ensuring the packaging sizes and standardization of that regard. However, it does say that the conditions for a sustainable standard to apply is the transparency, non-discrimination. There should be an effective compliance monitoring, and also the voluntary participation for agreements to benefit from sustainability perspective. It also says that sustainability should not be seen as a cover of more like a illicit anti-competitive effects. And this is not surprising, because online sales bans are enlightened as a hardcore restrictions from the virtual agreement, so we do not argue with that. Next level of reasoning, what I just got from the incentive that I just got from the horizontal guidelines were that they are assessing consumer benefits under Article 101.3, so under individual exemptions, and they do say some standards and some cumulative conditions that needs to be fulfilled in order to an agreement with sustainability focus to be exempt. And this is the efficiency, and it should demonstrate the substantiated qualitative efficiency standard. The second is that it should be indispensable, so no less restrictive alternative, economically feasible should be there available, and no elimination of competition for a part of the product, substantial part of the product or procure, and also the fair share of benefit should be transposed to the consumers. So this was what my research have found in terms of justifying online sales within the selective distribution, just restraints within the selective distribution system. However, I'm open to the debate, and I do think that it's not the full stop for this justification pattern. So the conclusion of my presentation, and I'm running very good, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that sustainability as a justification for online sales ban may indeed reappear, but absolute bans are unlikely to be compatible, and that will not be happening in the trademark owner's hand. The extent to which sustainability can justify trademark owners' powers in imposing online sales bans still remains ambiguous. However, vertical block exemption regulation guidelines and also revised package of horizontal guidelines do offer some incentives, and we should abide with that when we are sharpening our swords as the trademark owners to impose the online sales restriction. And future tests of justification are really dependent on what competition authorities, what the commission, what the ECJ, and what the courts do really offer in this regard. Thank you for your attention, and I'm really curious about the discussion and the Q&A as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Also finishing more than a minute early. That's great. We're catching up. So I'll give the floor directly to Pim, please, with comments. Yes.
Thank you, dear Tamta, for your presentation. And yeah, I think your discussion and also the discussions still surrounding Pierre, Fabre and Coty have highlighted an important aspect that needs to justify online selling restraints. And I congratulate you with your very novel perspective by integrating or thinking about integrating sustainability as a justification for online selling restraints within selective distribution systems. And I had to think about this quite long and hard because it's a difficult topic. And I would say online selling restraints can facilitate sustainable practices in two ways. First, they can help to maintain high quality standards by allowing manufacturers to choose retailers who adhere to the sustainability criteria. And secondly, they can also promote responsible consumption by discouraging impulsive purchases, often facilitated by unrestricted online system. And of course, yeah, a balance is required under the third paragraph of Article 101, which requires further analysis, and I'm very happy that you are doing that. But this makes me wondering, you draw inspiration from the horizontal guidelines, but this is quite a difficult question because I wouldn't know the answer immediately. So I'm sorry for asking. In what specific ways does the proposed test for integrating sustainability into online selling restraints within selective distribution system differ? How would it differ from the sustainability assessment in the new horizontal guidelines? Can we even use it? Because economically, situation is quite different. And of course, horizontal agreements are much more sensitive than vertical ones. So aren't you limiting yourself by just looking at the horizontal guidelines? The second point, this is a little bit more critical. Is it really necessary to impose online selling restraints to achieve sustainability objectives? Or could you achieve already the same through the application of qualitative criteria alone in setting up your selective distribution system? Because I would argue that qualitative criteria, and by the way, below 30%, it doesn't even matter if you have qualitative or quantitative criteria. I would say that qualitative criteria may also refer to the achievement of sustainability objectives. Or, for example, as an example, suppliers could require distributors to provide recharging service or recycling facilities in their outlets, or to ensure that goods are delivered via sustainable means, such as cargo bike instead of a motorbike. Mm-hmm. I think you could do that already. So the question is, do you really need to impose restrictions under the third paragraph? And I think this is a difficult question, because the implementation of online selling restraints, yeah, on the one hand, of course, it could contribute to sustainability objectives by controlling the scale and also the manner of product distribution. But of course, it also limits competition, consumer choice, crucial aspects of a healthy economic system. So the question is, would the application of qualitative criteria and setting up a selective distribution system not offer a more flexible and potentially less restrictive way of achieving your sustainability objectives? Those are my questions.
Fantastic. We're almost there again. Perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any questions in the room? So You too late. Sorry. Yeah. Are there any questions in the room about, it's a bit of a technical area, but I have one. But I cannot go first because that would be rude. Or I will go first because I don't see a hand. So the one question that I have is empirical. Do we see any brand owners starting to shape their distribution systems in a more sustainable way, publishing that and then potentially, or do we have any evidence that they're restricting themselves because of fears of infringing competition rules? So I'm wondering about whether there's any empirical evidence of that there is a problem, or that we are even starting to see that practice happening, and that would then trigger us to think about the problem. All right, so
yeah, thank you for the excellent discussion and that enlightenment from your discussion, because I also was considering the same questions with myself, but the research question that I had from the very beginning was that, are we awaiting more aggressive structures in the SDS with these online sales bans from the trademark owners if we impose, for example, sustainability as a justification pattern? So this was the first thing when I was discussing myself with this topic. And then I had, and also just kind of approaching to you what you were asking, we had this kind of a case, but not in the perspective of the EU, but I come from the Georgia. I'm mainly doing my PhD at the Tbilisi State University. So we did have this one brand owner who said that I'm going to restrict selective distribution systems with the sustainability argument, because I like that the consumers perceive me as a very sustainable product, as a very sustainable brand. And then we do not have this kind of advanced guidelines there. However, we did say that solely this criteria may not be enough to justify your online sales restraints. And if you justify this criteria solely based on sustainability, then we do have this approach that it should be transparent. And what do you mean by imposing the sustainability, and why is your product sustainable? This should be very transparent. And then we said that it should also be that the distributions should know that a distributor should know that it's non-discriminatory. And after that, they were thinking that, okay, no sustainability justification for this criteria, but for example, as I'm a brand owner, could the luxury nature be in? And then after that, we did have this argumentation and these perspectives there. However, there's also a case in Germany that I was discussing with my colleague, that there was a car manufacturer that wanted to plant to have these electric chargers planted in the local stores. So it's sad that it hindered competition in that dimension. And it's sad that we do have this sustainability argument there. And could we do this? Because it's not just selective distribution system, it's not the online sales restriction, but still some kind of incentives could be done from them. And they could not justify it with sustainability argument, because it was not the essence of that product, of that agreement with the local stores, was not sustainability itself. So it was just more like an agreement with two economic agents to have a better revenue and better future there. So does the proposed test differ from sustainability that you asked first? Yes, it differs. It really differs what horizontal guidelines do offer and what vertical context does have. However, if we say that vertical agreements should be justified with sustainability, we should also say that it should be non-discriminatory. It should be transparent. It should be voluntary. It should be more like could any other distributor enter into the selective distribution systems that and should know and should agree in the very first steps that it's that what we are limiting. But could you limit qualitative criteria? Yes, this is not the exact question that why research was focused, but I wanted to see that qualitative criteria such as sustainability, if imposed, could be a good justification. And I'm not really focusing that other qualitative criteria should not be engaged in there or not. So probably
it's a difficult question to make it very concrete.
Straightforward, yeah.
Because, so for example, you talk about restrictions of online selling restraints.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you're restricting, for example, resellers to sell in a certain way for sustainability purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, the German example that you gave, or maybe even the Georgian example that you gave, could arguably be already solved by just saying, yeah, well, if, for example, that German example with having a charger in your shop, you could add that as a criterion for being eligible in the first place to be part of that selective distribution system.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit looking for, like, why would you require additional agreements in addition to sort of the parties that you allow to be part of your system to restrict their online sales activities? It's probably my lack of imagination, but I find it a little bit difficult, like what sort of situations could not be covered by the qualitative criteria and you still want to exempt under the third paragraph.
Okay, for example,
because you also link it to luxury.
Yep. But I'm not linking it directly to the luxury. I say that luxury, non-luxury, it's still hardcore restriction that eliminates competition and so on and so forth if we have the total ban. I'm not arguing that direction.
Okay, so then an example could be, so for example, you allow certain parties to be part of your system, but for environmental purposes, you want to restrict your audience. Yeah. Basically, is that the sort of examples?
It's the sort of examples, and for example, from a supplier's perspective, it was that imposing a ban on third-party platform, for example, Amazon, because it is not really a company with the aspirations of the brand owner, and says that it does not have this transportation emissions on this leveraging and so on and so forth. So, but I'm partnering with eBay. So it's a very vague criteria why it's partnering with eBay and not with Amazon, because it cannot really justify, and you justify it with a sustainability argument. However, this sustainability standard is really, really very vague. Why not there and here? So the brand owners should have incentives to impose such kind of bans on platform only in cases, and with the sustainability shield, only in cases when this sustainability criteria is very straightforward. So what they mean it. Right.
And then, of course, for luxury products, you understand that. It sounds random, luxury products, but it's not random because that's the whole system where you have selective distribution systems in the first place. So then your question is, can you also use sustainability as a similar criterion to
May I just ask a question? So I'm coming to this completely different from a different perspective. But so if you're talking about resellers, won't you have to deal at the intellectual property system level about exhaustion of rights? So if you have a system where the exhaustion of rights is international, then you no longer have a role to play when you're talking about the reselling of your product, if you have a brand on it. So in that case, how would this interfere? Or rather, how would this intersect?
1 minute.
Yeah. So you mean that when we are reselling it international, the product internationally, does this justification and does this regulation of EU apply? or not?
Well, yeah, even if within EU, for example, you have the freedom of goods, right?
Mhm.
So the moment you sell in one EU state, technically, it should be able, whoever is reselling that product should be able to sell it around. So
Yes, but how we manage this distribution system is that case. I mean, if we have the qualitative criteria for the distributors to enter our selective distribution system, this is the main concern for the trademark owner, for example, when having such kind of system created, that only authorized resellers, only authorized distributors enter that system.
Maybe just to, if you wanna, so maybe just to add, so there was the COPAT case that said that you can use, so if you establish a selective distribution system in order to protect the luxury image of your brand, of your trademark, and then that selective distribution system, the chain is broken. So your products are sold by a third party that you did not allow into the system. You can enforce your trademark rights against that party. So that, and that's the weird thing that the European system delivered for luxury goods. And that's the whole debate, why it's possible actually even under trademark law.
And also from a computational perspective,
That would make sense.
you can add, there are clear geographical limitations in your system. So you can actually protect goods from leaving sort of the area in which selective distribution system operates.
And those resellers also
Yeah.
operate there.
So it's completely separate from trademark law. Yeah.
And this is why we also argue that there is a tension between competition and outside of the trade.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the comments. We'll move on, not to eat too much into Rajeev Sachdev time. So next we'll hear a presentation about towards an improved legal framework for trademarks on the internet. So now we're going to go more towards the trademark side, or deeper into the trademark side of things. And floor is yours, Rajeev, and you can, I think you can flick through the slides to try it. Okay, super. And I'll set the time and I'll let you know.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be back in Maastricht. I'm an ex-level PhD researcher and glad to be here, and thank you for the invite. I'm based in the US, where I'm an assistant facilitator at Cornell Law and a full-time assistant professor at PSU. And I'm an attorney and a solicitor. So my area, as was mentioned, is really about developing a potential model for a better framework to regulate trademarks on the internet on a variety of platforms. So we're talking about, and here's the long title of the PhD. So it includes e-commerce websites, search advertising, social media, of course, mobile apps, and as I've been working on this research, more and more platforms keep getting added, and so we're now here in the metaverse. And so I'm looking at it from a comparative angle. So the analysis of the US, EU, and Canadian legal frameworks, and as well as the international policies or the platform policies that regulate, so to speak, under either contract law or otherwise, what we can do and how we can use trademarks on the internet in these variety of forms. And because this is really an interdisciplinary conference, and I love that terminology because I have one foot in marketing and one foot in law, and if I had a third, it would be technology. And so these are the areas of the research. So long and short of it, I'm going to talk about trademark law, the technologies, and the branding and marketing aspects. And I'm going to argue that the legal frameworks, whatever they are, whether it's law, a policy, an international arbitration mechanism, or the policies of the individual social media and other platforms, whatever it is that regulates trademarks in one way or the other, fail to address where we are moving with the technology. And that's not a new revelation that the law has not caught up to the technology. But as I progress in this research, I feel personally that it's getting worse and worse, that it hasn't caught up. So I'll look at that from a comparative angle, and I'll make some recommendations. Most of these are developed, and some of which I'm finalizing the development up. So there's still a little bit of work to do on that. I go beyond the competition aspects, but competition is one part of my research, and I'll try to focus somewhat more on that angle. But the question really is, what recommendations can be made for trademark legal framework? So that goes beyond just black letter law in these three sort of jurisdictions, if I can call it that, as well as the platform policies. I'm going to focus a lot on the platform policies today in order to keep within the 15 minutes time frame. And I'll argue that the legal framework is insufficient, generally speaking, on the novel issues that the technologies and these platforms present to us. I think it got stuck.
Can you go with the?
Oh, yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
So some sub-questions on my research include, what is the current legal framework? Should we have an adapted UDRP-like model for other areas? What adapted model can be developed in order to help us understand all of the key areas of trademarks on the internet? What are some gaps in those legal frameworks, and what recommendations? So those are the sub-questions. There, I use comparative law and doctrinal legal research to answer these questions. There's lots and lots of references. Here are some key references that I will quote from, including the great works of Dr. Pierre Sanders, who's my supervisor in the room here. So let's just say generally, trademark law and the internet. So what is happening here is some people had originally said that, well, we have the internet, nothing new, it's just the same thing in a new guise. And I strongly disagree with that proposition, unfortunately, and say that along with many, many others, the need for an established IP system to cater approximately or appropriately for new innovation paradigms in a rapidly changing technological environment. Not only that, with the metaverse and other platforms and immersive technologies and moving into those directions, it's getting harder and harder. So the summary of this slide and what many people are noting here is the internet is rapidly evolving, and the law has not really caught up to that. So over some time, I took being informed by the work of many, many others, I created a model called the UBC-UTJJ model. Those letters have changed over the years many times, but essentially try to take all of the key areas that impact trademarks on the internet, including the notions of use, adding into that mix the place of use, because we talk about use in association with goods and services, or use in commerce and all of those things, but where are we using the trademark is now more and more important. So I added place of use, which is very, very relevant to what I'll be discussing. Bad faith is covered somewhat in the law or other policies, but I don't think abuse is adequately covered. And bad faith abuse is, in my opinion, sort of when you consistently engage in bad faith use of trademarks, then it becomes abuse. And what are the repercussions of that? Confusion as a key regulated area of trademarks. I would be remiss not to include that. And unfair competition, but not only that, but all of the related concepts that go along with it, such as unfair advantage, dilution, reputation, distinctiveness. These what are sort of related terms are really important to consider. Then are we looking at terms, conditions, and policies, because we can say, here's the law in these jurisdictions, but are we also considering what the platforms are saying and what they're saying is allowed or not allowed to be done, and policies such as UDRP, etc., and disclaimers that people use online, such as on websites and other places. How do those play a role in terms of whether there's an infringement or not? And then let's not forget, the internet is global. How are we dealing with the jurisdictional and territorial and geographic considerations? These create a lot of issues and problems that are hard to address, and then justifications, or you could call it defenses on the internet as well, if you like. So essentially, where trademarks and unfair competition relate to this, we're looking at it from an economic perspective, but of course, building on others' achievements, as Camperman-Sanders says, where the exploitation of these really needs to be addressed through unfair competition law. Also, Ramsey looked at this from the perspective of social media and social media usernames, or registering trademarks within user names and sometimes in the content of social media, and the importance of justifications or defenses of, for example, in the US, of the First Amendment, and ultimately concludes that we need to draw what this balance, the right balance is between the right to use a trademark as well as impersonation. And that's where the unfair competition aspects come in as well. So in a nutshell, I looked at the UDRP, which is a mechanism where if somebody takes your domain name, as we all know, with your trademark in it, you have a right to try to get that back in a cheaper and faster manner. Love that idea, love the concept. And as is noted by many, this is low cost. It's a great alternative way of getting your domain name back. But here are the elements. There must be some sort of confusion or likelihood of confusion. You must have no rights or legitimate interests in that domain name is another element, and bad faith. So that these are the pillars on which the UDRP is based. And hard to see here, but based on the model that I have developed, informed by the research of others, the UBC-UT-JJ model, I looked at a comparison between that and the UDRP, and find the UDRP to be more of a simplistic model, which is excellent, and it would be great to retain that simplicity. But there's some things missing that I think can be added into that while maintaining that simplicity and incorporating some of which are not directly stated in the UDRP. For example, the UDRP has a simple and short policy, which includes those three elements, but then they have guidance that goes along with it, and they've updated that to, version 3.0. And within that, you'll see hints of stuff from this model, such as unfair competition aspects, disclaimers, distinctiveness, unfair advantage, along with those three elements. So they sort of include other things, but they don't include it explicitly in the UDRP policy, but they refer to some of this stuff in their guidance. Why do we not include more explicitly in the UDRP these other elements that are part of this model, and allow for legal certainty to be developed for such a great approach to resolving domain names? That's the argument I make, because we can address jurisdictional issues. The UDRP allows panels to use local law in their decision, and we see that being done. Why not incorporate some of the key aspects of all that within the actual policy? And then why don't we extend this to all of the other platforms? Why don't we have, as others have suggested, in an article I wrote in 2016, as well as McGrady, Dawson, and others have suggested UDRP for social media. This has come up, many years ago. This is not new. I think only McGrady and now myself have developed actual text for such a policy, how we can adapt the UDRP. Mine includes the model and other elements that we can simply integrate into such a model. Why not extend that to mobile apps? Why not extend that now to the metaverse? As an example, social media, they talk about use within the social media platforms, but they don't talk really about use in association with goods and services or in commerce. They incorporate a little bit of bad faith. Facebook will say this, Pinterest will say something similar, but LinkedIn and Snapchat don't really adequately talk about bad faith. Confusion is talked about generally by Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, specifically by Pinterest and LinkedIn. Unfair competition and the related concepts you can see here. Every platform is doing something a little bit differently. They'll mention some related concepts here and there. Some will tell you specifically, like LinkedIn, do not create a fake profile or falsify information. We don't allow misleading or deceptive information, etc. Others will just regurgitate the law and say, counterfeits are not permitted, but they don't get into how in their platform this can be implemented or not. And so we're all over the place. And likewise, for the other areas of the model, same conclusion. It is all over the place. Some cover it, some don't. Some say this, some say that. That's the problem. There's no uniform policy. I'm suggesting we have one, as others have. And this is a sample text from that policy where I say, yes, include the 3 UDRP elements, but also in a simple fashion, include unfair competition, include as an alternative ground. Maybe you have confusion, maybe you have unfair competition, and just like a case would go to court and you can have those as alternative grounds, why not have that directly in the policy? Why not state all of the defenses in one policy directly? Same thing for the metaverse, same problems, having a uniform policy there. And last thing I'll say in 10 seconds is my research extends to, because currently the UDRP is not enough and not extended to the other platforms, we have to look at the law. And I've compared those 3 jurisdictions and find a lot of similarity. And I think also we can have some sort of similar rules for trademark law more generally on the internet.
Thank you so much, Rajeev. Thank you so much. So now we have comments from Intan, Hamdan, Liveramento.
I think my presentation.
Oh, you have a presentation as well. So let me just see. Do you want me to? Because I need to close down everything and.
Maybe then I can just start very quickly. So first of all, just let me have a disclaimer. I'm an economist, so looking at this is a little bit overwhelming. But I'm going to try my best to do it. So I work at the Woolens Property Organization. I will convey to my colleagues in the domain disputes team to say that you're a fan of their work, although you would like it to be extended to other parts. So some of where I think I might be able to give you some insights is like some statistics. Let's look at the numbers, right? Because at the end of the day, what are we talking about? And in fact, one of the main selling points of the UDRP is the fact that it's, like you said, it's cheap, it's fast, and it's available for many trademark owners, especially when it comes to domain disputes. Could we go further? Of course we can go further. But here's the problem. Trying to come up at the multilateral level of a new agreement, or even, like you're saying, extending the UDRP is so challenging. Not only at the national level or the regional level, but you're talking about the international level where specific interests are at play, but also specific competition issues are at play, not competition, but in the international trade perspective. Yes, that's the one. So let me just start out by just giving you having that disclaimer first of all, and then just giving you some statistics, right? Because, sorry, as economists, we love numbers, but no worries, I did not put any equation up there.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we have at WIPO is an international filing system called the Madrid system. And the Madrid system, what is the beauty of the Madrid system is that you can do sort of like a one filing way and then have it applicable to all the jurisdictions, which for a lot of inventors and brand owners, this is a simplified way to go forward and seems to be doing pretty well. So these are the number of Madrid application rates over time. And what we find that's quite interesting is the numbers keep going up, which, you know, it's common, and part of it has to do with globalization, part of it has to do with, you know, the fact that you have more goods and services that are branded, that are trademarked, that are going across countries. But at the same time, trademark is a very territorial instrument, right? In order to enforce it, you have to have it applied and granted in the country of interest, or the country that you're selling to. So when we look at the top filers in 2022, right, there was a slight decrease in the Madrid filing. You still see that you know, the main interests really come from these countries. So Germany, US, China, and it's not surprising given the fact that these are also the big countries that do have a role to play in terms of the types of goods they're selling and trying to make sure that they maintain the competitive space that they have created based on goodwill and specific intangible assets that they want to convey. For example, if they want to convey sustainability, to say that their brand is sustainable, then trademark is one way of conveying that, because you deal with the symmetry of information and consumers are better off for it. Now, you mentioned the UDRP. Now, the UDRP is started in 1999, so right, but what was interesting is, well, you only had one case, 1999, which case I'm not going to talk about it. But if you look at how it's grown over the time, right now we have like about 5,000 cases, and this is only growing in June, right? So that's going to go more. And what is behind these numbers, right? What can we say about the numbers that we see? And then I said, let's look at the cases related to online, right? And if we look at online, interestingly, you know, it is going up, right? And reflecting what you said, which is that, you know, online people, or rather entrepreneurs or businesses that are globalizing, that are selling their stuff overseas, they are starting to enforce their rights, and they're doing it in a way that is cheaper for them. So this is a way that you're saying, yeah, it seems to work. Right, it seems to work, and so this is great. And what can we tell based on those who actually sent their cases to UDRP? I have here a table of the complainants and the respondents. Right, I just randomly selected. So what you can see, right, China tends to be the one that is always on the other side, trying to defend itself. The US tends to be the one that complains. So it's very interesting. You start looking at the numbers, you say, there's something interesting going on here. And really, then I put it back to you. When you are making your cases about specific changes in legislation, specific changes on how, you know, trademarks should be enforced, or even from a competition perspective, just to look at the numbers and try to figure out what's happening at the local level. Because for us, as economists, we really like to understand, okay, you're saying on the high level that, you know, these specific legislations come through, these guidelines, these rules should come through. But help us understand why that's important. Because at the end of the day, we're looking at what's the opportunity cost of implementing specific rules, guidelines, and what impact does that have for the economic actors, the ones that are really having, that need access to this. And also, what's the recourse to enforcement that these private actors would have? And many times when we're talking about competition issues or trade issues, it's not easy for the small and medium-sized enterprises to enforce their rights. So then it comes down to, okay, then what's the role of intermediary platforms like Amazon, eBay, and so on and so forth? Then isn't it more efficient to have them deal with it versus at the national level? So yeah. I think these are just some considerations that hopefully will make your research a bit more complicated because you have to look at the numbers, but perhaps would convince my fellow economists to also then follow into your camp.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the comments. For the sake of time, can we take any question in the room and then you can answer maybe in 1.5 minutes?
That's it.
I mean, there's gonna be lunch, there's gonna be dinner, right? So are there any questions in the room? Okay, then please repeat it.
Thank you so much for your enlightening commentary. I actually am very glad you mentioned numbers. I did include all the numbers for the EU I downloaded and had to manually calculate for all of the countries how many complaints and respondents there are. And you're right, absolutely, that the US group are the complainers with the big numbers.
But they also not too bad in terms of responding to specific.
Right. Absolutely. Now, I'm not looking at all of the countries, of course. I'm limited to 3, and that's also getting quite extensive in terms of the numbers. But certainly, I think what the numbers tell, including the ones I have and those that you have presented here, what I would really love to maybe get from you are the online related ones, because I don't know how much publicly that's available, but I'll connect with you offline on that. I think what they tell is there's a growing trend. What they cannot tell is what would these numbers be for all of the other platforms where we do not have a UDRP. And I think just based on my expertise as a marketer, that there's a huge and a growing number, especially because now all the brands, not all of the brands, but eventually, assuming the metaverse kicks off in the way people are mentioning, there's going to be a huge influx of, and depending on how we classify metaverse registration, because that itself is in flux right now. There's going to be a growing trend in those numbers. And so essentially that's very important. Yes, it's very hard for SMEs, small organizations, new brand owners, those who startups to deal with all this. And I think without mechanisms as those that are being recommended in this research, they cannot do anything. They cannot go to court. They cannot afford to go to court, spend the time and the resources to protect their brand rights or their trademark rights, I should say. And finally, what is the role of these intermediaries? I think there's a huge role. What is that role? Is they need to, I'm not suggesting that, I should have made clear actually, that there be a UDRP for social media that's administered by another body. What I am proposing is the main social media companies maybe get together, create their own panel, finance that panel, because they're each doing that individually now. They're taking complaints from people and through a forum, let's say, and they're deciding on that complaint for their own individual platform. Why not have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc., form a group that will be a panel. They will decide for all of those social media companies, and they'll finance it at a low cost or free filing as it is now, and deal with the complaints in their forums. Same way for Metaverse and the 3 or 4 major Metaverse platforms, same idea. So I see a huge role for these intermediaries to deal with trademark infringement and unfair competition within their own platform forums through their own mechanisms. So that's a clarification point. But yeah, that's what I had to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much. And we'll be down, just looking at time and having Kalpana's voice in the back of my head. Let's move on to our final presentation, and then I still have a lot of questions, so I'm looking forward to lunch. It's a presentation by Tania Pantazi, and the title is Online Hotel Booking Platforms, Competition Issues in Light of the BMA. So I'm expecting MFN clauses here, right? Yes, and we can see some on your slides already. So the floor is yours, Tanya. I'll put the timer to 15 minutes, and I'll just give you a heads up when there's 2 minutes left for your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Hello, I'd love to be there with you. Unfortunately, I was not able to. I am Tania Pantazi. I'm an adjunct lecturer for International Hellenic University and Hellenic Open University, and also a postdoctoral researcher at in the University of the Aegean. My subject is online hotel booking platforms under the DMA. The main points I'm going to address is whether there are any gatekeepers in the online hotel booking sector according to the DMA, the price parity clauses or MFNs in hotels contracts with online platforms, self-preferencing, and other issues of unfair terms and differential treatment in the hotels contracts with platforms. In the online hotel accommodation market, we generally come across two types of platforms. On the one hand, we have the so-called online travel agencies, which are platforms that in which the consumer may directly book a hotel. The most well-known are Booking.com, Expedia, and Hotels.com. On the other hand, we also have meta search engines, which provide comparisons between prices and other characteristics in different platforms.
Sorry, Tanya, your slides are not moving.
Okay, 1 minute. I think I have to set the full screen mode and then share.
We do not have the presentation here. No, okay. Share first. Yeah, so if you share first, you know the F whatever it is to put on presentation mode there? F5, okay. Yeah, so exactly.
Can you?
Yes, perfect.
Do they change now? Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I always have this problem with Zoom. Anyway, we have the online travel agencies on the one hand, like Booking.com, Expedia, and Hotels.com. On the other hand, we have meta search engine providing comparisons between hotels, such as TripAdvisor, Trivago, and also Google now has its own meta search engine, Google Hotels or Google Hotel Ads, as it is known. The first issue that arises is whether there are any gatekeepers according to the DMA in this sector. According to Article 3 of the DMA, gatekeepers shall be an undertaking with a significant impact on the internal market, providing a core platform service and enjoying an entrenched and durable position. If certain quantitative thresholds are met, there is a rebuttable presumption that the undertaking qualifies as a gatekeeper. However, a recent market study for the European Commission in the hotel booking sector found that the hotel bookings through OTAs only represent the 44% of their total bookings for independent hotels, and this percentage is even smaller for hotel chains, which means that the platforms are not as important for hotels as we might have thought. Booking, of course, is the dominant platform. It accounts for 67% of bookings through OTAs. And there is currently increased speculation on whether Booking.com will be designated as a gatekeeper. In any case, we will see the first designation of gatekeepers as of September 2023. So this question will be answered shortly. The most discussed issue in literature in hotel contracts with the platforms are price parity clauses, or most favored nation clauses, as they are called. We have wide MFNs, according to which the hotel cannot offer lower prices on any other channel. And we also have narrow MFNs when the platform restricts the hotel's discretion to offer lower prices on its own website. National authorities have a very diverse views on this issue. There is no case law of the European Court of Justice, and there are already several national laws which totally prohibit MFNs, including narrow ones, in France, Austria, Italy, Belgium, and Portugal. Moreover, in 2021, the German Supreme Court, in a case against Booking, has ruled that narrow MFNs are in breach of Article 101 TFEU. There are several empirical studies in economic literature that suggest that the ban on MFNs in general is beneficial for consumers. However, the market study for the European Commission found that the prohibition of MFNs in Austria and Belgium did not have any significant effect on prices and other market conditions. The DMA includes a total prohibition of MFNs. According to paragraph 3 of Article 5, the gatekeepers shall not prevent businesses from offering the same products through third-party online services or through their own direct online sales channel at prices or conditions that are different from those offered on the platform of the gatekeeper. Gatekeepers may, of course, still restrict offline sales, and there are grounds to suggest that this total prohibition of MFNs will be beneficial for consumers. If no gatekeeper is designated according to the DMA, the issue can be dealt under competition law. The new vertical block exemption regulation, VBER, includes an article according to which wide MFNs in online intermediation services are no longer exempt from its scope. And also the VBER guidelines state that narrow MFNs may also be exempt if used by platforms covering a significant share of users, which means that this kind of clauses cannot benefit from the safe harbor that the VBER offers. The problem with competition law would be market definition. Is it the market of online hotel bookings, or is it the market of hotel bookings in general? There is currently a very interesting case pending in the Netherlands against Booking.com. And the Amsterdam court is planning to ask the European Court of Justice if wide and narrow MFNs fall into the notion of ancillary restraints, and how the relevant market should be defined. With regard to self-preferencing, this issue is mostly relevant for meta search engines. And there are two possible cases that have been reported in literature. The first case is the case where a meta search engine favors platforms that belong to the same group, such as when Trivago favors Hotels.com, while they both belong to the same group, the Expedia group. And the second case would be when the Google general search engine favors Google's own meta search engine for hotels, Google Hotels or Google Hotel Ads. This case would, of course, bear similarities to the famous Google shopping case. The way that Google Hotels appear in general search results has caused many doubts. It is an issue that has been raised in a recent workshop on self-preferencing and the DMA by the Commission. It has been raised by rival platforms, of course. And here we see that when one makes a general inquiry about hotels, the first results that appear are sponsored results. Right below, we have a very small icon with the other meta search engines. And then we have the Google's own meta search engine, which appears as a much larger icon with a map, hotel photographs, and in general, it is much more prominent. The DMA introduces a ban on self-preferencing in Article 6, Paragraph 5. The gatekeeper shall not treat more favorably services and products offered by itself. So the DMA may have a significant impact on the way that Google's results are presented. However, it seems that other meta search engines, the second most popular one is TripAdvisor, they will not satisfy the criteria to be designated as gatekeepers, as their significance is considerably lower. With regard to other conditions and differential treatment in platforms, a recent study for the European Hotelier Association, which is called HOTREC, has found that the majority of hotels feel pressured by OTAs to accept their terms and conditions. The problematic contract conditions that have been mentioned by hoteliers include clauses, platform clauses on cancellation policies, on offering special discounts on the platform without the hotel's consent, and on retention of customer contact details, as platforms usually do not allow hotels to directly contact their customers. Hotels also mentioned that they fear worse ranking if they offer lower prices elsewhere, and better rankings for hotels that pay higher commission rates. There are some articles in the DMA which may be used to address some of these issues. Article 5, paragraph 3, which I already mentioned, business users shall not be prevented to offer different conditions elsewhere. So this article may be used to tackle not only contractual conditions, but also other penalizing behavior. Paragraph 4 of Article 5 is also relevant. Business users shall be allowed to communicate and promote offers to end users, which they have acquired through the platform service. And Article 6, paragraph 12 may be of some relevance for application stores and online search engines. That article says that conditions for access should be fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory.
You have 2 minutes, Tania.
Okay, I just have another 2 slides. Of course, the issue of unfair conditions can be dealt under competition law. It will probably be abuse of dominance. It is worth to note that the facts in a recent case with Kinkerhoff made reference to unfair conditions in the contracts between Booking.com and hotels. However, this case concerned the jurisdiction, so the European Court did not have a chance to reply on the substance of the issue. But abuse of dominance on behalf of Booking.com is also the subject matter of a newly opened investigation by the Spanish Competition Authority. The problem would probably again be market definition. Some concluding remarks. In the online hotel accommodation sector, we will probably only see Google and maybe Booking.com to be designated as gatekeepers, according to the DMA. The issue of price parity clauses is an open one. There are diverse views among member states and conflicting national laws. The DMA will forbid all types of MFNs for gatekeepers. The DMA may provide some solutions for self-preferencing, and other types of differentiated treatment may also be addressed. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll be happy to hear questions and your feedback.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That you were perfectly on time despite technology glitches as well.
Yeah.
So we have comments by Qian Li, who is sitting not next to your, but you're better positioned to see the screen actually. So no, I was just looking at Tamta and thinking you're not Qian Li. That's the only thing. So
It's okay, I can switch.
no, please.
Very enlightening and interesting presentation, and I enjoyed reading your wonderful insights. And it is about updated legislative process of the DMA and its application to tackle the concerns caused by the unique sector, the online hotel booking industry. And I have learned a lot from your insight about the pricing mechanism in the online hotel booking industry due to the most favored nation clause and self-preference. Because my PhD project is about AI-enabled price discrimination from a computational perspective. So, but my focus of the pricing system is based on big data and algorithm, which is about the personalized pricing. So, here is my first question: if this will, the suspicious undertakings are dominant and they engage in self-preference conduct, which paragraph in Article 102 of TFU would be applicable to address already discussed concerns? And I understand that the self-preferencing conduct is a bit similar to the price discrimination under Article 102 paragraph C of TFU. So I was wondering about the difference or the relationship between the self-preference and the price discrimination in Article 102 paragraph C. And also agree with you that the DMA is an ex-ante instrument to tackle the concerns caused by the most favored nation clause in the hotel industry. As you pointed out in the insight, it remains challengeable as to whether digital platform in the travel accommodation sector may be designated as gatekeeper in the context of DMA. And if the suspicious undertaking cannot be designated as gatekeeper, the competition law can still step into the market explicitly to capture the anti-competitive practice, either by Article 101 or 102. But there are also difficulties for the application of the competition law in digital markets. For example, how to define the relevant market, how to determine the market dominance, and also how to identify the anti-competitive practice. It seems costly and complicated to address concerns caused by the most favored nation clause under the competition law as well. So my second question is, if the online hotel booking platform cannot be qualified as gatekeeper under the DMA and the dominant market player under Article 102 or 101 of TFU, how can we solve this problem in online hotel booking market? Is there any room for the application of liability rules? In particular, if the consumers suffer from anti-competitive practice due to the unbalanced position of the consumers and the dominant undertakings like Booking.com, as well as the high burden of proof in the proceeding, the consumers or the victims have very low incentive to claim for damage. So in this case, the private enforcement seems doesn't work effectively as well. So my question is, how can we adjust this problem systematically?
Perfect. Thank you so much for your comments. Great, and also great keeping to the time. So, are there any questions in the room directly that we could pose to Tania?
I think I said just about with what has been discussed so far, and I was wondering whether there is an evidence or something that the narrow courses are not so incompatible with the competition setting. So does it really have any empirical evidence that prohibiting the narrow clauses of MFN does really improve the competition of the market, or it does not really change the total landscape?
Thank you. Any further questions. I have a minimal comment to make, Tanya, about you mentioned that hotels are worried about how they're ranked depending on which commission arrangement they accept and other policies that they implement. I just wanted to ask whether the P2B regulation takes care of that to some extent, because at least the platforms need to justify how they rank. So if you could take, I mean, we started a bit late, if you could take about 2 to 3 minutes, that would be great to answer these questions and comments.
Yes, thank you very much. To be honest, I wasn't very clear, listening very clearly to Qian. So I will try to answer some of the questions. On the issue of empirical evidence on whether on narrow MFNs and if they're beneficial, there are some studies. I think they are they concern individual countries, but they suggest that they are beneficial for consumers. I mean, the ban on narrow MFNs is beneficial for the market, and this was also the finding of the authorities in Germany. This is why the German Supreme Court took this position, that narrow MFN should also be prohibited. And the P2B regulation, I have looked into the P2B regulation, and to be honest, I had the sense that it mostly relates to issues of transparency, and it does not address the issue of unfairness in substance. This is why I have not included it in my insight, but definitely it will be worth to mention, because at least on the issue of transparency and withdrawal of the from the contract if anything goes wrong, it can provide some solutions.
Maybe we can just pick up a little bit because we still have a minute. Maybe you can just repeat your last question, because I think it summarized everything more or less, because it seems the DMA is not really helping to address this issue because most booking platforms will not be gatekeepers, right? That was your first point. The second point was under Article 102, we have the problem with market definition, plus what kind of subsection would it fall under if we deploy? Did I understand correctly? You mentioned that under Article 102, you have the problem of market definition and the problem of classification as to where.
Yeah, it's very complicated to apply Article 102 policy of you to tackle this problem.
Yeah. So whether Article 102C would be an option to tackle MFN clauses. And the last one?
First question is about the relationship between self-preference and
yeah. So the other question was about the relationship between self-preferencing and MFN clauses.
Okay. Yes. On the impact of the DMA in general, my impression, to be honest, this research began because I read an announcement of the Hoteliers Association that they are very happy about the DMA, and that it will help them in their relationships with the platforms, that they face many problems in their relationship, and they placed a lot of hope on the DMA. This is why I initially took the decision to investigate the issue. So my impression is that Booking.com will not be designated as gatekeeper, so the DMA will not have any significant effect, except of course for Google. And the market definition according to Article 102.
Yes, I think that was one of the problems raised, right? How could you find dominance in that case?
I haven't found a reply to this problem, to be honest, because my impression, of course, I'm not an economist, but my impression is that online hotel booking is a different market from hotel booking in general. I mean that a consumer who wishes to book a hotel online will not switch to telephone booking. So I think it is a problem that remains open and it needs to be addressed. Maybe the new Commission notice on market definition will provide some answer to that. And the relationship between the MFNs and abuse of dominance, of course, if the MFNs can be justified by 101 paragraph 3 has been an exception. Of course, we know that the same issue can be then addressed as an abuse of dominance. There are different conditions for the two articles. But I think that it is a matter indeed that can be addressed under both provisions.
All right, great. So we're 5 minutes over. So thank you so much for your replies, Tanya. Thank you for the comments and for the discussion. And then it's lunchtime, so I don't want to keep anybody for longer. So thank you so much. And
thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so does somebody take over the Zoom or does this call stay on for?
Bye-bye.
Bye, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.